Hey everybody, this is Ryan Steller with the Standard Care Briefing. This topic we're going to talk about is an ongoing ransomware attack in the United States that's affecting a lot of people, at least 1 in 3 Americans, potentially more. We're going to tell you who is affected, why it's happening, when it started and when it might end, how it was done, and then we're going to get into some technical details and some interesting darknet details about the origins of this stuff, who's doing it, and some of the primary evidence that doesn't get shown in news stories or by press releases from the companies involved, but will be helpful for you to understand the nature of what's going on.
Warning. This video presents artifacts accessed via the Tor network, aka the dark web. Visiting these sites requires precautions. Please take a moment to review your computer's security, or better yet, do not visit these sites. At a minimum, have a VPN, use a secure browser like Brave, and consider using an isolated network. Under no circumstances should you download data from these sites. Doing so may implicate you in a data breach. Please be safe. Thank you for watching. Back to the show.
So before we get started, welcome, thanks for being here. Please like and subscribe if you can to support the channel, and share this with anybody in healthcare, technology, security, or any other industry that you think might benefit. With me today is Mike Martinelli. Mike, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Ryan?
I'm incredible. Still a little sleepy, but I got a couple of nights of 7+ hours sleep. My newborn is cooperating, so we're good. I'm good. Everything is good. This is a tweet from a famous venture capitalist, Dave Haber, and he says, "It's pretty wild how little the Change Healthcare debacle is being discussed. It's basically the SVB, Silicon Valley Bank crisis plus Experian. Experian is a data holder that tracks your FICO credit score, data breach all in one. Providers can't submit claims. Providers in this context means doctors, and thus aren't being reimbursed, may have serious working capital issues. Clinical data can potentially 1 in 3 Americans might be compromised." It's potentially larger than that. Just to recap what is going on, who's involved in this attack. This is an ongoing cyber attack with UnitedHealthcare. UnitedHealthcare is the parent company that purchased a lot of other companies, but the Optum arm of UnitedHealthcare runs the back office stuff of many healthcare organizations. UnitedHealthcare, you may know as the name on your insurance card. Optum is their subsidiary that kind of runs back office billing and processing stuff. And then Optum purchased another company that was more technology focused called Change Healthcare just about a year ago. And Change owns a lot of the actual software, servers, and API infrastructure that's used to power Optum. Fun fact, these are gigantic companies. As of this week, on February 29th, one of the hottest companies in the news right now is NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a giant company. NVIDIA does about $80 billion of revenue. By contrast, UnitedHealthcare does closer to $400 billion of revenue. So that's 5 times as much as NVIDIA. So it's an absolutely gigantic company that affects a huge number of Americans. And you may be affected even if you do not have United Health insurance, because Change Healthcare is the infrastructure that powers many other health plans. So we're going to dig into some of the details around that. So who's involved? It's UnitedHealthcare. Specifically, they're a technology-oriented subsidiary called Change that provides digital infrastructure to the rest of the healthcare ecosystem. The adversary here is a hacking group called BlackCat and AlphaV, and we're going to share more interesting details about them. What critical systems were compromised? So a lot. It sounds like AlphaV may have gotten root, meaning they got access to a number of servers and administrative roles within Change's infrastructure, and has been able to access quite a bit of information. So we have a list of that information shared and published directly by AlphaV. When did this commence? It's been about a week now. So if I'm honest with you, when we were planning this episode, we were planning to talk about a different topic. I thought this would be old news. I thought the hack would be over, but in fact, it's still ongoing. So what that means is maybe half of America, 150 million Americans, have not been able to get their drugs reimbursed. And soon your doctor may not be able to get paid for your visit to the doctor. So this means a huge portion of the United States economy, which is healthcare, is $4.3 trillion of the United States economy. It's about 1/5 of the overall $20 trillion that flows to the United States economy. About half of that $4.2 trillion may be affected by this ongoing hack, and it's happening for 8 days now. So there's close to 1 million independent physicians practicing in the United States. There's 1 million small business owners who may not be able to get revenue. And then similarly, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of pharmacies unable to get their normal streams of revenue as well. Not to mention, cancer patients that can't get oncology drugs, people with depression who can't get their antidepressants, people with heart medications who can't get, Plavix or their beta blocker, so on and so forth. So a lot of people are potentially affected. The stories are starting to bubble up more. I think for a little while, it was easy enough for the pharmacy to just be like, oh, our systems are down, or like, the computer's on the fritz. Oh, computers, technology. It's always so crazy. Technology. How does that work? We have no idea. We can't master or control it. It just happens. So if you got that kind of answer from your pharmacist this week, that's probably what's going on. It's been going on. It's for 8 days on Change Healthcare, but this is actually part of a longer term story by this group, and they have gone through and absolutely obliterated a number of healthcare organizations, but other types of organizations over the course of 2 years. This is a concerted campaign, I would say, by this organization to use the same tactic over and over again. And what's I think surprising here is that companies are still prone to it after getting multiple warnings from the United States federal government, Interpol, and like all these other organizations, not to mention the press around it. So why are these attackers targeting UnitedHealthcare? It's pretty obvious. They can pay. This is a ransomware attack. We don't know exactly how much they're asking. Usually it's in the millions, like 2.5, 10 million. However, because United is so large, the group might be savvy to that and might be asking for much, much more, 20 million, maybe, billion, I don't know. And how did they manage to pull off such a sophisticated breach? Well, it's not exactly certain at this time, but if you've ever watched like any of the classic hacker movies, most of this stuff is social engineering. There's a way in which it's talked about where you would like to say, oh, it's like people cracking, systems, like they're somehow reverse engineering, like a firewall or something. That's not the case. Most of the time, these are attacks based on social engineering and the bad habits of the humans involved in maintaining the digital perimeter. So that means people who reuse passwords. Very commonly, people will use a password from a social media website at work, and then what happens is that crappy social media website gets breached, and then that ends up on the dark web, and then that website gets used for your work email. Not rotating passwords, not using randomly generated passwords, not using different passwords for each system. Phishing, obviously, so receiving strange emails, clicking on them, and providing information about you, your logins, your administrative credentials, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk a bit more about this stuff. All right, so let's go. Let me look at the notes real quick, kind of get oriented.
I think it might be a good idea to help for a comparison to understand like what type of attack this is. This is the same type of cyber attack that happened here on the East Coast, the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack. I remember that. It was a few summers ago because you couldn't get gas anywhere. So unless the Colonial Pipeline, the utility company, paid the ransom, the hackers who hacked into their software. And so like that, the analogy is you couldn't get gas because of the Colonial Pipeline shut down. Ransom attack here, it's prescriptions at pharmacies.
Right. So, Mike, can you grab the FBI slide deck talking about the scroll up a little bit, the top one. This has been kind of an ongoing series of attacks. The FBI, the CISA, and several other organizations, I think including the State Department, because this involves foreign actors. This is going back to April 2022. And this is part of a news service that the FBI provides to interested and affected parties. And they're talking about indicators of compromise, techniques, and procedures associated with a ransomware variance. The point of sharing this document is the federal government has been aware of this for a while, and they've been doing quite a bit to communicate about it. And the question is, at this point in time, why are these things kind of still viable, kind of vulnerabilities? And it could be the case that there's, ransomware that we don't understand at play, but let's see, go down to indicators, please. So this is one of the things that's interesting here is PowerShell scripts, additional PowerShell file names. This is basically files that you can scan computers for to see if this ransomware is active. So if you're in IT and you've not seen this list, it's available from the FBI, but amd-copy.ps1. And if you're just kind of a random corporate employee who uses computers and you look at these file names, they're designed to be incredibly generic. They're designed to be not obvious, as being ransomware. They're not called ransomware.txt. And they can sit on your computer for a very long time. So they may be placed at any random point and then activated as part of an attack. So very likely these systems were infiltrated over the course of the past couple of years, and the group waited until now for whatever reason. They felt like they were ready to make this attack. The other thing that's interesting about this is it appears to be only Windows systems. So there's something about the security model and file control model on Windows systems that does tend to make them more prone. They can also be quite finicky to maintain, so end users sometimes don't have the best hygiene for security stuff, which makes them vulnerable. They have not been very open about this stuff. And one of the things about security is, I'm sure they don't want to alarm anybody. They've been communicating through like status channels, but they don't have anything on like their public social media. So Optum, UnitedHealthcare don't have anything posted on LinkedIn or Twitter. And the reason behind that obviously is they don't want to affect like stock price. They don't want patients to be alarmed. But the behavioral thing that's disadvantageous about that is it means that other people who might be affected, other insurance companies, other practices that might be vulnerable to the same attack, are not getting timely, accurate, and precise information about what the experience of the attack is in order for them to fully understand what's going on. Behind the scenes, Change Healthcare is evidently having a rather messy negotiation with the group. So the group is sometimes known as AlphaV, ALPHV, or BlackCat. And I'm not sure. I guess AlphaV is the group and BlackCat might be the campaign. I'm not 100% sure. But the general idea is Change is not complying, but the information that they're sharing is also incorrect in a way that is irritating AlphaV, which is messy and kind of silly. But the reason they're doing that is AlphaV, these groups do like to take credit. And in fact, AlphaV has a public website. So you can visit their website, you can read their blog. The screenshot that's up on the blog right now is from yesterday at 4:19 p.m. I'm not sure if that's East or West Coast, and has since been taken down. So they more or less posted it to poke the bear, to irritate their adversaries at Change Healthcare, and then have since taken it down. But they did that because an incorrect telling of the story has a way of making them look less powerful, potentially, less capable, and they don't like that. They don't like the idea that you would diminish the threat in press releases, in system status statements, or to the regulators concerned with data breaches in the federal government, because it gives the sense that they're less powerful than they are. So that in order to be clear about how powerful they are, they made this statement. So we'll just read it out loud because it's actually very hard to find this document now. So you'll be able to get the full picture of it. Pause the screen now and you can read it yourself. I'll read it out loud. UnitedHealthcare has announced the attack is strictly related to Change Healthcare only and was initially attributed to a nation-state actor. So and then they go on to say 2 lies in 1 sentence. The reason you may want to blame it on a nation state actor is you may want to make the threat seem bigger than it is to regulators in the United States, such that you sort of put it on this like fuzzy nation state actor, and you draw it into a bigger adversary that's of equal size to the United States government, which sort of makes it look more okay, when in fact even the hacker group is kind of saying, no, like we're just this little hacker group, like stop trying to overblow this. And then second is strictly related to Change Healthcare. Saying it's strictly related to Change Healthcare is undermining the value of the acquisition of Change Healthcare. Change Healthcare was acquired because it gave UnitedHealthcare tendrils into many, many other insurance providers and practices and hospitals than it could own just under UnitedHealthcare. So it is almost definitely not, saying it's strictly related to Change Healthcare is not telling the whole story. Only after threatening them to announce it was us, they started telling a different story, says AlphaV. It is true that the attack was centered on Change Healthcare production in corporate networks, but why is the damage extremely high? ? So this is spin that the AlphaV team is trying to put on this to be intimidating. Change Healthcare production servers process extremely sensitive data to all UnitedHealthcare clients that rely on Change Healthcare technology solutions, meaning thousands of healthcare providers, insurance providers, pharmacies, etc. Also, being inside production network, one can imagine the amount of critical and sensitive data that can be found. So AlphaV is opening up your imagination, the reader's imagination, to all of the vast power they may have accumulated. They go on to say, we were able to exfiltrate, to be exact, more than 6 terabytes of highly selective data. So that's 6,000 gigabytes of data. I don't know how big a hard drive is these days. Most hard drives are like 2 terabytes. So like 3 terabytes worth 3 hard drives worth of data. They go on to say the data relates to Change Healthcare clients that have sensitive data being processed by the company. The list of affected Change Health partners that we have sensitive data for is actually huge, with names such as Medicare, Tricare, CVS-CareMark, Loomis, Davis Vision, HealthNet, MetLife, Teachers Health Trust, tens of insurance companies, and others. Anyone with some decent critical thinking, now they're just being insulting. They just, I don't know why they're being, what's going on behind the scenes between Change Healthcare's SecOps people and these people is messy, evidently, because these guys are not happy after 8 days of negotiation. Anyone with some decent critical, they're just slapping these guys around. So anyone with some decent critical thinking will understand what damage can be done with such intimate data on the affected clients of UnitedHealth solutions as well, beyond simple scamming and spamming. So here they're going on to say, like, a lot of, I think we talk to people a lot about their personal data, and people often say, I'm not worried about a breach so much because I know everything gets breached eventually, and I know my information's already out on the internet. That many people are like resigned. They kind of have lost faith that there's any sort of like permanent security solution for personal data, which is sad. But the reason you shouldn't think that way is this landscape is changing very rapidly, particularly with generative AI. The ability to simulate who you are and then breach systems at massive scale automatically is now very feasible from a technical perspective. And this group is trying to create urgency to, for Change Healthcare to pay out by, sparking the imagination of what might happen. So they go on to say, after 8 days, and Change Health have still not restored its operations and chose to play a very risky game, hence our announcement today. So they're kind of saying like, hey, you guys are really, really getting on our nerves. They're trying to turn the knife here. This is very dramatic stuff. The statement was taken down also, so I'm very curious if they're walking that back partially. Maybe I'm sure there's a lot going on. It's like I'm sure there's a war room. United and the technology vendors handling this. The teams that do this stuff treat it like war. They are very good on both sides. So I'm sure hundreds of people are working on this right now. So for everyone, both those affected and fellow associates, to understand what is at stake, our exfiltrated data includes millions of active U.S. military naval personnel, PII, personally identifiable information. So that's a very square attack to say we have vulnerability, we have leverage over the United States military. Medical records, dental records, payment information, claims information, patients' PII, including phone numbers, addresses, social security numbers, emails, etc. 3,000 plus source code files for Change Healthcare Solutions for source code review gents out there. Insurance records, many more. So it's like this is great merchandising copywriting here. Okay, there's so much value here in this hack. Get this hack now. UnitedHealth, you are walking on a very thin line. Be careful, you just might fall over. That's insane. So now, first off, you wouldn't have to say that unless, I don't know, them saying it is kind of like they're trying to up the ante. So they clearly don't like what they're hearing. But it may also indicate that United has a strength that they are confident in. So they're not capitulating, they're not paying over the ransom because they believe they have something up their sleeve where it's not that big a deal. They may have done a threat assessment on this data and determined it's not actually that useful. So we'll see. It goes on to say, P.S. For all those cyber intelligence so-called expert dumbasses, we did not use ConnectWise exploit as our initial access. So you should base your reports, you tell people, on actual facts, not kiddie speculations. So a lot of people getting called out in one statement. These folks they're about their business. They're about their business. That's what I would say about them. They scare me. I'm not interested in dealing with them. So get where they're coming from. All right, so let's just take a second. I guess, Mike, do you have any first thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, one thing that comes to mind is like what we were talking about is like everything piece of information that's like out there that we've discussed. Like that's what's like accessible to the public. After reading this, like you kind of start to understand that there's definitely like backdoor negotiations going on. Just like between two, governments that aren't on good terms, like U.S. and China, U.S. and Russia. If some kind of foreign policy issue goes on, you don't have diplomatic relations with them. You do the backdoor channels. That's the same with, anytime there's a hacking incident that involves a government or corporations that are, large enough to be on the scale of as a government.
There's a lot of reporting on this. I think what I would encourage people who are very interested in this topic to do is realize you can go see this primary evidence and to not rely on Wired or TechCrunch or CNN or whomever to tell this story. If you're particularly if you're comfortable using secure browsing technologies like Tor, because it's actually remarkably public. Now it gets obscured in the reporting because there are lobbyists and there's like ad spend interest. A huge amount of the ad spend dollars in the world, come from insurance companies. So there's a lot of different like power dynamics happening behind the scenes here that go into the reporting the story. But if you do have a genuine interest, it's really important to get better educated about how this stuff goes down so that you are able to prepare your organizations and prevent it, and also ask the organizations that you pay money to live up to those standards. Let's see, what is the next interesting part of this puzzle to share with folks? Oh, Mike, can you scroll down to the excerpt from the 8K? That one. To zoom that in. So there's two places we've been able to find a public statement about them, and they've both been pretty buried. One is a status page, which is used to communicate API system status. So it's kind of like an indicator of red light, green light, the system is up, the system is down, along with a blurb about status, which is not something that press or hospital executives or many people will be looking at. And then the second one is in a SEC filing, an 8K document. And the 8K states on February 21st, 2020, this is United's C-suite speaking. in a formal SEC disclosure. UnitedHealth Group, the company, identified a suspected nation-state associated with cybersecurity threat actor, had gained access to some of Change Healthcare information technology systems immediately upon detection of this outside threat. The company proactively isolated the impacted systems from other connected systems in the interest of protecting our partner and patients to contain, assess, and remediate the incident. The company is working diligently to restore those systems and to resume normal operations as soon as possible, but cannot estimate the duration or extent of the disruption at this time. The company has retained leading security experts, is working with law enforcement and notified customers, clients, and certain government agencies. At this time, the company believes the network interruption is specific to Change Health systems and all other systems across the company of operation. During the disruption, certain networks and transactional services may be accessible. The company is providing updates to the incident at status.changehealthcare.incidents. Please access the site for further information. As of the date of this report, the company has not determined the incident is reasonably likely to materially impact the company's financial condition or result of operations. So that's a very interesting statement. This is forward-looking guidance to Wall Street and stock analysts, buy-side investors at Vanguard, Fidelity, so on and so forth. And they're saying that they do not think this is a big enough threat that it will affect revenue. So that's interesting. I'm not sure how they could have made that assessment on February 21st, since this incident basically started February 21st. I'm not sure how long they've known about this.
Or did it technically start February 20th? Because on that screenshot, it was that we showed from the hackers, it said February 28th, and it said the attack that we initiated 8 days ago.
Okay, so they had 24 hours. So within 24 hours, they were like, this is not going to affect revenue. But we know that hundreds of millions of Americans and then millions of practices are not able to process insurance claims right now. So this is, I don't know, it's a bold statement to make that an SEC filing. All right, what else is interesting here? I think that might be it. So I guess while we have everybody, Mike, can you maybe talk just a tiny bit about FTC health breach stuff and then HIPAA, how HIPAA might play into this?
FTC health data breach notification rule, that most likely wouldn't really be relevant here. That deals with personal health records, which is the legal term PHRs. And those are an example of that would be an app that some type of health or nutrition app where you input your own health data. So it's not data that's collected in the course of giving you treatment. If that was the case, so healthcare data that's collected in the course of, treatment, such as, going to the doctor's office or getting prescriptions for medication, that would be what's called protected health information, PHI, which is regulated under HIPAA. Now, the types of entities that deal with PHI, there's two categories. There's covered entities. So those are your first line providers, your physicians, your pharmacists, the people, physical therapists, dentists, the people actually giving you the care and collecting that health data and then making it as part of your record. And then there's also what's called business associates. And they could either be contractors or subcontractors that work with the covered entities on specific tasks that involve the requirement for the covered entity to share the protected health information that they collect from patients. So an example of a business associate could be an outsourced private billing and accounting firm that works with a hospital. They have to go into what's called a business associates agreement under HIPAA because they're a subcontractor working for a hospital, but they have to see diagnostic codes of patients in order to process claim billing and claims and stuff. So that means that if you're able to see health data that's protected that was collected from patients in the course of giving treatment, you have to enter this business associate agreement and you are equally liable under HIPAA. So you're bound to the same regulations under HIPAA as the covered entity, like for example, the hospital. Here, what I'm going to say, I'm 90% sure that the actors here, most of them are business associates. Now, how that's relevant, they're regulated under HIPAA, and there's no difference how they're regulated under HIPAA to covered entity. They have the same, but as it stands now, there's still, this is still ongoing. So we haven't really seen anything about HIPAA enforcement. Once the dust settles, we'll probably start to hear more about that. But there's still too many things moving pieces right now in order to start a regulatory action.
Okay. And we should share. Can you bring up the site? We should share what the bad thing is that happens if without compliance. So what happens if Change chooses not to pay or doesn't work out a alternative security response? So this is the AlphaV website, and what they have listed here is basically all of the people that have been affected. So if you don't pay up, they just take whatever they have and they dump it on here. And we didn't count down through here, but you can see there's at least 8 pages. There might be more.
Yeah, there's more. I went to page 8 and then
Yeah. So each one of these pages has whatever it is, 12 different companies on it. Viking Therapeutics is on there. E&J Gallo Winery is. So there's 8, what is it? 8 times 6 is 48. There's at least 48 different dumps on here. And a lot of them are healthcare related. So yeah, that's what happens. These folks are not playing around. I think that's the other thing of why I don't know. The game theory of what's going on here, I trust, changes like security leaders to do what they think is in their best interest. But there is an end state here where this information possibly ends up on this website, and I think that's a shame. So for our interests, part of the reason we're doing this, and part of our general mission and the work we do is to raise awareness about this stuff. Healthcare is a very soft target. The reason is healthcare clinicians are so overburdened by the way healthcare is running these days that they often have bad IT and security hygiene, which makes the systems and hospitals and insurance companies vulnerable to leaks like this. And we're not going to go through everybody here because we don't want to dox them, but there are dozens of healthcare companies in here. There's children's information, there's vulnerable people's information, and it's pretty significant that it's pretty significant that this happens at all. This is also not very unique. Ransomware attacks have been going on forever. So the only thing that can really change this is the culture of a company and choosing to prioritize this stuff effectively enough and to reduce the friction of complying with it enough to get to a point of perfection or security around this stuff. And it's never fully perfect, so I think we'll leave an affordance for every organization does have potential vulnerability. But yeah, anyway, for the folks out there that may have had lost access to care, we hope that you're doing okay and able to either pay out of pocket, because you can still buy your medications. You can't process them on insurance. So hopefully you're able to get medications and treatment effectively in the meantime. And, I wish Change's security culture and IT culture was better so this didn't happen, but I also have respect for how formidable they are as a company, and I'm sure they have literally billions of dollars into preventing stuff like this. This wasn't complete negligence by any means. So we just hope that there's a good resolution here, and hundreds of millions of people are potentially suffering. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Please share this with somebody you think might be interested in learning more about this stuff. Like and subscribe to support the channel.
Just one word of advice: GoodRx, the app. I definitely recommend that if you haven't used it before. I use it because there's some, generic medications that I've taken that my insurance covers under regular copay, but GoodRx sometimes could beat that price. So definitely, at least worth a try.
All right. So if you're in need and you're going to pay cash, download GoodRx. You might be able to cut yourself a break. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please like and subscribe. Have a great week. We'll see you later.